And welcome back to episode number 74 of Raise the Banner podcast. Just three co-hosts as usual. Benny Ballgame, Dearth, Zach Brewitt. Zach, what are you drinking tonight? Is it just
Got a
a
little
seltzer?
polar lime seltzer. Yeah, nothing crazy.
You gotta throw a little tequila in that or something. Tequila
I'm trying to
soda.
get like you.
Yeah. And myself, McIntyre, like I said, yeah, I mean, man, you get it's Mai Tais. It's the way to go.
My Thai season, mock draft season.
Matt, it's Monday. It's Monday. Like, do you have a problem? Matt's slugging Mai Tais on a Monday like a savage.
Over the last 2 weeks, the only time I've drinking is during this, during the podcast.
Maybe it's us.
You gotta let loose a little bit. Yeah, I think it's you guys are bad influences. But anyways, let's jump into it. We are going to be doing an exclusive Raise the Banner 2.0 draft, mock draft for the Patriots tonight. That's going to be the entire podcast. We're going to jump into a bunch of different conversations. There's a lot of news, a lot of rumors surrounding the top 10 right now. And really, I mean, the top 32. This has been, I said this the other day, the fact that this is a quote unquote weak draft is causing betting odds and reporters and all that to really have no goddamn clue what's going to happen. I think everything's just a toss up. On top of that, there's the whole QB conversations and where are they going to go and all that that's causing a stir. How are you guys feeling about the draft as a whole, in terms of what you're expecting on Thursday night?
Kind of expecting more of the more that goes on, the more that I hear. Like you said, there's more about trading up, and it really all pegs on number 4. And the more I hear, the more I kind of think about it. Do I think it makes more sense to trade back? I do. I still in my heart of hearts feel that Mike Vrabel would want to take Will Campbell, but it all goes back to who has the ultimate decision-making power. And if it's Elliott Wolf, I could see him trading back, from 4. Talked about it before we went live, but whether that means the Raiders jump up from 6 to trade up for 4 to go grab Genty. Same thing with the Bears if they want to come up a bit farther from 10 to go grab Genty. And I'm using him as the example, of course, but it'll come down to see who ultimately has the power. That's kind of been a narrative all off season, especially since Vrabel came into play. And if it's Vrabel, like I said, it's going to be Will Campbell. But what makes the most sense, especially if you have as many holes as this team does, trading back, getting more assets, and acquiring more draft capital to then trade back up into the later part of the first round, especially if you go, wide receiver, what have you. That to me would be the ideal start to the draft. But again, it'll come down to whether it's Wolf or Vrabel calling the shots.
Ben?
My phrase is going to be expect the unexpected. I say that, but I think that I would say sitting here at, almost 6:40 Monday before the draft, probably 70 to 75% confident in the first 8 picks of this draft. And that's based on no trades. I think you're either going to see, I feel like you're either going to see no movement, or I feel like you might see a lot of movement in the back half of the top 10, middle of the draft area. I would say if the Pats trade back, which I'm probably still 60-40 that I think they're going to stay. I just don't know if they're going to get the offer that would really make them go, well, we can't not make this trade. I don't know if they're going to get it. Although, we were just talking beforehand, before we jumped live, that there's been a lot of jostling between 4 and 5 with the odds about who's going to go. Even, before we jumped on, we talked about how Genty now is tied with, I don't have it in front of me, I forget who it was, but he has the second best odds to go 4 behind Will Campbell. Who was the other guy?
Carter,
right? Yeah. If he falls, because there's been some noise about whether, I feel like for the better part of like the last 3 months, 2.5 to 3 months, it's been, well, Mason Graham is the guy that the Jags are taking, and there's been a lot of noise lately about, well, maybe they're going to go with Genty. Obviously they've got ETN and Tank Bigsby, but neither one of those guys is a stud 3-down back caliber player. Genty would certainly be that for them, and so that he's kind of shot up a little bit in the last few days. So I feel like, if the Pats are going to trade back, it might be more likely now that they're going to get calls from both the Raiders and the Bears, who I expect are going to be the two teams the most active in trying to acquire Ashton Genty, figuring that, maybe they have to pay a little bit more to jump up. I think that's probably the first spot you're going to see some noise is maybe the Pats trade back. But, sitting here, I would say, I would favor it being Ward, Hunter, Carter, Campbell, then Graham, Genty at 6, Membu 7, Jalen Walker 8. I would say that, in my opinion, I think the odds favor that kind of being the outcome. But I think you could very easily see Chicago or the Raiders calling New England and being like, we really love a guy at 4. Here's our best offer to try to move up. I think the Pats would probably be more or less reluctant to trade back to 6 versus 10. Because, again, even if the Raiders are trading up for Genty, I don't really think that changes the Jaguars' plan, because they would just take Mason Graham, and then the Pats are sitting there at 6, and they can still take, Will Campbell, or, if they really do love Jalen Walker to a point where they're like, we can't not have this guy on our team. I think the Pats can still get their guy at 6 that they can get at 4. But that's kind of where I'm at. But I think you could be in for a wild night, especially if you have a trade at 4. I think all bets are off, because it's going to change a few things in the back half of the top 10. But I'm at a point where I'm kind of excited to see how it goes. I think the only sure thing in this draft is who's going to go top 3. But confident in the top 8. But if you had told me a year ago at this point that Michael Penix Jr. was going to be the 8th overall pick, I think I would have laughed at you and told you were crazy.
Or Bo Nix was going to be.
Or Bo Nix. I mean, it was either 10 or 12, something like that. People didn't. There was talk about Penix barely being a late first, and he went top 10. So, expect the unexpected, but ready to see what happens on Thursday night.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. Last week the word was ass when describing the Red Sox. Tonight it's just going to be chaos. I think that this first round as a whole is going to be really chaotic. I think this is going to be a ton of movement. And I say that because I think that the value in the assets necessary to trade up are going to be less than what they usually are. So, when people say, okay, it's a weak draft, so teams kind of want to move back and all that, because like you can get the same player at 15 that you can get at 8, and 25 that you can get at 15. Yes, that's a fair argument, but at the same time, every team is still going to have their preferences, right? No matter how you put it, every team's still going to have a board. Every team's still going to have a guy ranked 8th and a guy ranked 15th. So if they're sitting there at 17, and the guy that's ranked 8th on their board is still available and it's a 12th pick, go up and get the guy, right? So I'm looking at that and I'm saying, I think that there could be a lot of movement in the first round, starting at 4 and moving all the way down to 32. Like I said, there's going to be, I think, a ton of movement in the first round. So I think that starts at 4, and then that's where we can obviously start our mock here, right? And so we're looking at the Patriots here at 104, right? And so let's reset this mock draft from last week. And so we're looking at this, and as we basically expect, I'm going to have to probably do this multiple times. Yep, Will Campbell's not going third, until we get the right mix here. Because we all agree, right? It's going to be Hunter, Carter, and Ward. Well,
yeah. I would say though. Well, let me ask you this: what are the odds that a team like the Raiders calls the Giants to trade up to 3? Well, no, because the Giants probably aren't going to move that far back because at that point they significantly risk.
Come on. Okay. I mean, I guess we could have played that with that scenario, but I just don't. I wanted to play out the most likely scenario possible, which is.
Well, was that last one showing Shador going 3 to the Giants?
Yeah. So hold on. Yeah. So do this. Pick as annoying as it's going to be.
No, it will just give me. We could just continue to talk about it until I get it right.
I was going to say you could just pick the first 4 picks and then just skip those teams every time, but that just makes it annoying in the early part of the second round.
Come on, dude. No, all right. But anyways, so
hold on. Change the setting. Go off. Make it more like change it where it says public versus PFF. Move that over a little bit.
No, it's going to make it worse.
I was hoping that would. I was hoping that would make it
worse because Ward and stuff are ranked so low.
I mean, that's true. I was hoping it would still do Ward and Hunter, but then give Carter to the Giants because he's higher than.
I could, in theory, pick for the Giants.
Well, Matt, I mean, you asked earlier, like, if we're all in agreement that the first 3 picks are pretty much locked in: Carter, Hunter, and Cam Ward. I still don't know that I fully buy into the Giants not picking Shador. I don't know how you feel, Ben, but I think I've been pretty vocal. We had Cerrone on a couple weeks ago about them just being a little stupid and being a little desperate and needing to get that next face of the franchise. To put a number on, I don't feel like I'm not going 60-40 or 70-30. I say it's 50. I think it's probably 55-45 that they don't pick him, but they are a team certainly who.
Well, the conversation comes is if you're willing to trade up for a guy like Sanders, right? And if you're willing to trade up for a guy like Sanders and you're willing to go from like 34 into the early 20s or maybe even the late teens, like if you like him that much, I feel like the conversation does should you just take him at 3? Right? Like if you believe in him enough to give up a bunch of assets to get him in the middle of the first, then why not just take him at 3?
So here's my take on that. It's kind of twofold. One, I think the Giants look at it and go, they would rather give up, because you figure to go from 34 to say 21-ish, right? Because theoretically you'd probably have to go to Denver at 20, because in all likelihood, right?
This is getting so ridiculous. It never does it like this. Like I have the correct 3 at least like a fourth of the time.
I would say you probably. I mean, you do run the risk of losing Shador if you don't trade to 20.
This is good.
Matt, hold on. I would say do if you get the more popular scenario that we've seen where it goes Ward, Hunter, Shador, because I would say that there's at least there's a high enough possibility that the Giants could just say, well, screw it, go with Sanders, that if you get that again, yeah, fine, just go with this. And then let's just pretend that Carter's not on the board, because Shador, Carter going in the middle of the top 10 isn't going to change anything for later. I would say though, so here's the twofold part of this. I think that the Giants look at it and say they would rather give up a future asset and 34 to get Shador in the second half of the top top round, I guess, but then there was a report the other day. There we go. Finally. So then I like how you're like,
the charm.
Yeah, 5 years later. There was a report the other day, Matt and I talked about this a couple days ago, where apparently Jackson Dart has a first-round grade from multiple teams. Not specifically the Giants. I guess the Steelers have a first-round grade on him. But I guess Brian Daboll loves Jackson Dart. And I figured that the Giants probably look at it and go, we could probably move up from 34 into the latter half of the first round and not have to give up a ton of an asset to move up and still get our guy, and we get Abdul Carter. I think they look at it and go, we can have Abdul Carter and Shedeur Sanders with basically only having to give up, say, like 2 future draft picks. And you probably don't even have to, like, I don't know how, if you'd have to give up a 1. Like, if you go from 34 to 21 or 22, I don't think you won't have to give up a future first round pick for that. Like maybe a couple of thirds or something, right? Like for the loss of a couple of draft picks to move up into that second third of the first, if he's still there, I think the Giants look at it and go, we'd rather do that and have Abdul Carter than take Shedeur at 3, because you're definitely not getting Abdul Carter in that scenario. And then you're just sitting at 34, taking probably even if they jump up from 34 to like 28 or 29, you're probably getting roughly the 3rd or 4th best edge rusher in the back half of the second round. So it's like, I think they look at it from that perspective. We can get the top edge rusher and our guy.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to like really how far up they're willing to trade. So I think like a team like Seattle could look to move back, but do they want to move back all the way to 34? Like, no. You know what I mean? And until you're getting into the, 23, 24, 25 range, like the teams really want to move back out of the first round from 18, 19, 20, stuff like that. That will be the conversation that they'll have, and I'm sure they're testing the waters around, the teams and conversations with that right now. But we're sitting here at number 4. We're gonna go off the fact that this is the top 3. Really, the only 2 conversations here is A, are we taking Will Campbell? Or B, are we buying the hype that Ashton Genty is going to be a hot enough commodity that a team's going to willing to move up? When you look at the teams that are willing to move up, obviously you got the Raiders at 6, you got the Bears at 10, but we shouldn't also rule out the concept of the Jags tossing the Patriots a pick just to swap spots to make sure they get them as well. How are you guys feeling here, and what's more likely and what you think we should do?
So I think the most likely scenario is, in terms of who's going to make an offer that the Patriots would accept, because I think that the Bears absolutely make a call here, and I think that at a bare minimum, you should be looking for a return of 10, 39, or 41. They're basically the same pick, and then at a minimum, a 2026 second round pick. Like, I think that's where the conversation starts. If you can talk them into that second round pick next year being a first rounder next year, that becomes a harder conversation. I don't know if you'll get that. I don't know as if the Patriots would accept that offer over, say, like Vegas calls and says, here, we'll give you 6, 68, and a third rounder next year. I think that's a much more likely trade back for the Pats than it is to go back to 10, even though they get, like, overall, you're getting more value. You're staying in the top 10, adding an early second and a first or a second next year. Like, there's more value there. I just don't think the Pats would want to move back that far because, A, if you're sitting there at 4 and you trade back to 10, I would say there's a 75 to 80% chance you're not getting Will Campbell.
So if Jacksonville comes and offers 5 and 74, you take it, right?
So it depends. So if my 3 options are 5 and 70, 668 and a third, or 10, 1 of the seconds and a second rounder next year, I'm probably taking 668 and a third, because at that point I'm getting more value and I'm not moving so far back that I'm drastically risking losing out on the top guy on my draft board.
Well, so my thought is, I don't know if the Raiders are giving up, we're talking about a running back, right? And so we got to evaluate where teams look at this. Genty is as close to, and I hate this word, but generational that you get in a running back, right? He's seen as just an automatic stud. So
yeah, he's this year's version of like a Bijan from a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So like, are you looking at it and saying, is it worth a top 6 pick and 2 more thirds to get this guy? I don't know if I buy that. And I don't know if I buy Chicago giving 39 and a second next year.
Okay, so fair. Okay, but at that point, so if you're looking at 5 and 70, 6 and 68, or 10 and 39, like 10 and 39 is not enough. That's not even that's a non.
So I'm gonna throw you out 3 offers, Ben, and let me know what you would pick. You get an offer of 5 plus 70, you get 6 plus 68. And a 26 fifth, or you get 10 plus 39 plus a 26 third.
6, 68 and a fifth.
I'd probably agree with that.
So you're leaning that.
Yeah, the Bears offer is not that much better for me to go, okay, I'll move back 6 spots and in all likelihood lose out on my top guy.
So the difference between 6 and 10 means that you risk losing at least maybe all 3 of Campbell, Walker, Warren, and you would obviously lose out on Genty, right?
If you move back to 10?
Yeah. I think Warren would still be there.
Warren would still be there, in my opinion, but Campbell and Walker, in all likelihood, would be gone.
Right.
Correct.
And I would say, based on who he's been linked to, I would say Walker is the guy that I would say is definitely not there at 10, more so than Campbell. I think they're both gone, but I think Walker has a higher chance of not being there than
the
Campbell.
Hypothetical is if let's say the Bears did move up, right, and so we got the Bears in this 4 spot, they take Genty. That turns and we say, okay, now the Jags take Mason Graham. Mm-hmm. That leaves the Raiders of what to do. They could go Tet. They could go they could really use a corner, but I don't know if they're taking one of the top 2 guys this early. Or they could go Membu, which in my opinion, that's who they would take.
Sorry,
who
would take Membu if they moved up?
I think if the Bears moved up and took Genty, it would go Genty, Graham, and then the Raiders would take Membu. That is.
You think the Raiders would take Membu over? Well, they've got Colton Miller, but only for another year.
He's a left tackle.
But you don't think they would take Will Campbell with the idea that they can that Campbell's basically an insurance policy if they can't figure it out with Colton Miller?
They could. I mean, yeah, they could go Will Campbell at 6, and then I put it this way. I think that if Genty goes at 4 and Graham goes at 5, 6 and 7 both are Campbell and Membu.
Yeah, and then 8's probably.
That's how I think it plays out.
And 8's probably Walker.
Yep. And then so if we had we had 9 here, we have no idea what New Orleans is going to do.
Yeah,
they could in theory go Warren. It's not they re-signed, I think, Juwan Johnson, but like that doesn't stop you from taking a guy like
that. I lean Tet McMillan at that spot because they don't have anybody else besides Chris Olave, really. Like, I know that they've got a couple of like decent guys, like Shaheed's not a bad option, but I kind of lean McMillan there. But that to me is a wild card. That could be McMillan. It could be theoretically, like if they're like, oh my God, like we have to figure out our quarterback situation because Spencer Rattler's not the answer, and
they could go Sanders or Dart.
They could take a quarterback there. I think they could very easily trade out. Like, I don't expect the Cowboys to move up. There's been reports lately that they're not looking to move up from 12. But depending on how the board falls, like what if they get, the hot seat, so to speak, cold feet, whatever it is, and they go, hey, like this guy like is still here. Like I wouldn't rule them out moving up, but yeah, like 9's is like, that's the biggest wild card to me.
So let's just say they go a guy like Ted. So at 10, you're looking at Tyler Warren, you could jump at the next best tackle, which seemingly, according to reports, is likely to be Kelvin Banks. Which is
a reach at 10, in my opinion.
Yeah, so you could go the top edge rushers. The Pats had Michael Williams in for a visit. He's supposedly going to go pretty high.
And Nick Scorton is he's good, but he's the lesser of the two Texas A&M edge rushers.
Yeah, so I mean he's probably unlikely there, but you know what? I think the Pats can play game here, right? And we look at Vegas, and Vegas says we want Ashton Jeanty, and you're the Pats and saying we're going to take a calculated risk and say we'll take this below market deal because we're confident that the Jags are going to take Mason Graham, which will leave Will Campbell for us. And worst case scenario, let's say Jeanty goes forward to the Raiders. Now the Jaguars are like, what the hell do we do? They, for some reason, trade back and a team jumps us for Campbell. Okay, worst case scenario, we end up with, which seems to be their number 2 option, Jelon Walker. So do you guys want to do this here, 668 and a 5?
Yeah, I mean, again, in terms of what's best for the team, going back to using Bill's phrase, even though you don't need to force it.
Nah, you don't need to force it.
It's
they're just not interested in the pick, but they'll just do it.
I'll just force it.
Okay, because I've definitely done it where they're not interested and it still takes the trade.
Yeah, when you're doing every team full first round mocks, they do it. That's probably what you're thinking.
I've done it this way too. Right. But anyway.
All right. So
in terms of what's best for the team, going back to 6, like you said, Matt, gives you the chance to still get Will Campbell if that is your guy, and gives you the MO to go trade back up into the first round for, wide receiver or edge rusher, whatever you want to kind of double up in the first round. And
that pisses me off. That just pisses me off beyond.
Well, because the thing is in real life, they're not trading up for Mason Graham. They would be trading up.
I know, but like, but they're still not. That just annoys me. I kind of want to restart it and just.
I'm fine with that.
To the point. Until the point we get. I don't really give a shit about the rest of the picks as long as we get.
And again,
we have the option of
a semi-realistic outcome. Yeah,
and again, this is like the semi-realistic, like, we're not doing this because we want it to go a certain way.
All right. So now we're, screw all this, whatever. We're not talking about that. So now, like you said, we took the calculated risk. Let's say Jeanty's at 4. We got Graham at 5 in this hypothetical. It leaves us right back to where we were, right? The exact same scenario, but now the Pats got an extra third-round pick. They got a 5th for next year, and they still get to choose between Will Campbell and Jelon Walker. Who are you taking?
I'm still taking Will Campbell. I mean, I just think that, and this is my gut because I know that Vrabel has kind of he's talked out of both sides of his mouth. He's hopped the fence a couple times. I still think at the end of the day, based on his initial comments going into the offseason, that he wanted to build, for lack of a better phrase, from the inside out. He wanted to build from the line out on both sides of the ball. Based on that initial comment and the fact that the only thing they didn't really do in the offseason was add to the offensive line at a meaningful impact position, I think it's Will Campbell here. I think that if, like, Alaric Jackson, Ronnie Stanley, there's another guy, Matt, that I'm forgetting, another left tackle, that never hit the market. They all signed, like, before the tampering period opened. Like, if one of those guys had gone to the market and the Patriots had landed one, then I think we're talking about, either staying at 4 and taking Carter if he's there, or at that point, it's like you can just legit go best available because you've already addressed your left tackle situation. So then you could go, cool. Do we just draft Will Campbell and say you're our left guard? And now we've legitimately solidified it. I think you have a different conversation, but because they didn't do left tackle, like, to me, it's Will Campbell. As good as Jalen Walker probably will become. I just go off of Mike Vrabel's comments. I think it's Campbell.
All right.
Yeah, what do I think is going to happen is I think it's going to be Will Campbell. That being said, there's still some question marks about whether he's going to be a tackle or a guard. Moving back to 6 certainly makes it a bit more doable because you got, some extra pieces because of that. Like taking him at 4 with the amount of question marks of is he going to be a guard or a tackle, I think is a harder pill to swallow. But now that you got something else for him, or like for moving back, taking him here certainly alleviates some of that, hard pill to swallow mentality. And again, I agree with Ben. I think Vrabel's comments all but suggest it's going to be Will Campbell.
All right, so we look at this plays out.
Oh, Jesus,
I'll stop it.
You're like turbo going through this thing, Jesus.
Right, so I look at this and I say the very earliest the Pats can move up for someone is like maybe like right here, 23 to Green Bay. Egbuka's gone.
Tet's gone. Golden's gone.
Tet's gone. Golden's gone. So, the odds that they move up for wide receiver here are pretty low. Luther Burden's going to be available into the late 20s. That's just how I expect it and how these mocks generally end up going. I'll resume it because I don't see them moving up.
So on that note though, so like say this scenario plays out where Egbuka, McMillan, and Golden are all gone, and and there's been reports that the Chargers, the Seahawks, the Packers, the Texans are all in the market for a wide receiver. Like I understand that the odds have favored this, and the mocks from basically everybody have favored this. That Burden's kind of like he's seen as wide receiver 4 at this point. I just don't know if if the team's in here, right? Like Seattle doesn't have a young wide receiver anymore. Like Tyler Lockett's gone. They signed Cooper Kupp. They traded DK. So it's like if the top 3 guys are gone, whatever order you want to say it in, like I don't think Luther Burden falls past 18. Like and say say Golden and McMillan are not top 10 picks and they go a little bit later. I think that I don't think a wide receiver falls past 25. I don't think
Burden's going to go in the top 25. I really don't. Intrigue.
So if the top 3 guys are off the board by 20, you don't think the Chargers are going to take Luther Burden when they clearly have a need for wide receiver?
I mean, they do, but they just lost Joey Bosa. They absolutely could use the entire defensive line. They need edge guys. They need interior guys. A guy like Kenneth Grant right here. I mean, we know the connection. John Harbaugh coached him, right? So that's a very easy connection. We talk about a Colston Loveland. If he was happen to be there at 23, an easy connection of where they could go. And you talk about the similar to Green Bay. Yes, Green Bay could use a wide receiver, but they have a big need at edge rusher, big need. They have Jair Alexander, who's unhappy and seemingly on the outs of Green Bay. They could absolutely use a corner. You know what I mean? So they're not the Chargers and Green Bay aren't handicapped into they got to take a wide receiver, right? Not by any means.
I got you.
Because you got to remember that if the wide receivers go early, right, and the tackles go early, that's going to leave some really good names for them, really good players that fall into them. Now, I don't think Walter Nolan's falling here.
No, Walter Nolan to me he's a fringe top 10 pick in my opinion.
Yeah, I think 10 or 11 to Chicago or San Francisco is a really possible landing spot for him.
Yeah. I kind of like San Francisco to be a sneaky play for a top edge rusher, knowing full well that Nick Bosa's days, I mean, not that they're numbered. He's what?
Well, they got Joey Bosa there too, right?
No, he didn't sign in San Francisco.
Bosa went to Buffalo, I think, right?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Just to confirm, Joey Bosa, he signed with the Buffalo Bills. There was a rumor that he could team up with his brother, but he didn't. So Joey's 29, which means Nick is 28. So it's like, I'm sorry. Well, he'll be 28 in October.
Yeah, but San Francisco's got. I mean, San Francisco could go anywhere. Like they've let up a bunch of pieces. They could go.
They could absolutely go. They could go. Like I think if all the wide receivers are on the board at 11, I could see them going wide receiver. Considering they just traded Debo, and there's a rumor whether or not Ayuk is going to be there long term. And the problem with the next 2 to 3 years in San Francisco is they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy. I shouldn't say they're going to have to.
They shouldn't.
They're working on an extension. So Brock Purdy would appear to be there. So given the talent you have in Brock Purdy, he needs weapons. Like Christian McCaffrey's,
they can go absolutely anywhere. They should just go best available player, like San Francisco. Whoever they like the most, take.
Yes, I would agree.
They have spots all over their roster now, but anyway, all right. So we're sitting here right in the back half of the first round. I hate that they don't show us best available.
If Mike Green went 24, I mean, what edge rushers are still on the board? You probably have
Scorton should be there still.
Scorton should still be on the board. Pierce should still be on the board, although there's some questions over his character.
Yeah, well, Mike Green, there's a lot of talk about Mike Green falling out of the first. There's a lot of talk. Apparently, he has some very worrisome off-field concerns. We'll see, obviously, about that. But anyways, he's there. So we're really looking at, for the Pats, like a Nick Scorton, who I think is a very real possibility. He visited New England. I think he fits what they need on the edge. Big body dude, can get after the pass rusher, solid against the run, a really kind of all-around guy. I don't really see them moving up into this range for a guy like him, though. Maybe 29. Buffalo isn't good.
I was going to say, I was going to agree with 29 because even though they signed Bosa, I think Buffalo is still a dark horse to take an edge rusher because Bosa is going to be 30. So
edge rusher is still a need.
Yeah, even though they signed him, edge rusher is still a need. Philly, I would just, unless they trade out, I expect Philly to go edge or D-line something. They lost their entire defensive line. Basically,
we talked last time about them being a major trade up threat as well. So you certainly want to beat them out. You certainly want to beat out Buffalo, of course, as being in the same division.
Not to try to I don't want to necessarily match last week's mocks so much, but they could move up. But I don't know. I don't know if Nick Scorton's a guy that they're going to move up for. This far, I could see if Nick Scorton gets into the 31, even into the early second.
Would they move up for a guy like Michael Williams?
Michael Williams?
It's.
They would, but Michael Williams is going to go in the top 15.
He's right there.
Oh, he's already gone. Never mind.
Would they move up for a receiver then? If they're,
I don't think
Burden
they're
at the beginning of this, but
I really don't think they're going to move up for Burden. I think that they look at Burden, and this is just my opinion, but
sure,
I think they look at Burden and say, do I really rather him than a guy like Noel or a guy like Kyle Williams? Really, the more I watch them, I really don't know if I even rather Burden than them. I really don't. And so to move up into the first round to get one of them, I don't really see it.
So let's compare this to last year. So last year they made a concerted effort to trade up from wherever they were. They tried to trade up multiple times into the back half of the first round because they were looking at guys like Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette, and in theory, I suspect Ladd was probably somewhere on that list, although clearly they had Polk ahead of him on their draft board because they targeted possession-based X receivers.
Every time we see Ladd McConkey, I just look up at Matt's face, and it's always the same.
Yeah, Ladidi McConkey, shout out Mr. Garvey, would have been he would have been like this generation's Julian Edelman, just a scrappy, like can do, like get like good route runner, catch, great catch, great hands, good with the ball at, after the catch. Like he would have been that guy. He's a little bit bigger than Edelman.
Whatever they do at wide receiver this year, I just hope that they've changed their philosophy of taking a college team's number 2 and trying to make them your number 1. Like Ladd was clearly Georgia's number 1, and he was
to be
burning
fair,
everybody
if they took Jalen McMillan like I told them to, he would have been better, and we would have been happy right now. But
true, but again, they've done it forever, making other teams number 2 their number 1, and it doesn't work out.
Yeah,
where Ladd was clearly in the SEC.
Are we agreeing? Like I think we should let this slide past the first round and
I mean,
see where things stands.
Maybe slow it down a little bit instead of just because.
I don't know if I can do that. Can I?
Yeah, it's over there, up top left. Just slide it down one slot.
All right.
That's an interesting pick for the Bills.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, James Cook is pissed.
Yeah, but I also don't think Amari and Hampton, like, if he's sitting there at 29 and the Commanders are not getting offers to trade out, like I fully expect him to go at 29. I wouldn't write off the Broncos taking him at 20, considering they have a need at running back. So he's not going to be there anyway.
So I mean, there's certain reasonable expectations that both these teams could not own these picks. And in this scenario, at 33 and 34, you could have teams like any one of these teams picking, which makes it far less likely that they trade back again, right?
Yeah. Matt, do you want me to pick those guys so that I can look at the draft board and tell you who's available? No, that's not helpful.
I mean, that will take forever.
Manually pick everyone.
I was going to say, because I'd be in the same spot you are. There goes Burden. So there goes Scorton.
All right. So at this point, there's not anybody that I feel that they should move up for. I really like, and obviously we're only talking 3 spots here. So let's play this out. And really, they were going to take none of those guys, in my opinion.
No.
So now we're sitting here at 38. We talked about Kevin Winston Jr. last week. He's a first-round talent that got injured in a partially torn ACL. Personally, I think Trey Amos is a first-round cornerback. I think he's a stud. I think him going to a team like Buffalo makes a lot of sense. Washington makes a lot of sense. Even Philly makes a lot of sense for him. Benjamin Morrison, I am also a fan of. I think he's a really good player. He's dealt with some injury issues, so it would depend on his health. But looking at this, is there anybody that necessarily jumps out to you guys as like, all right, we're going to sit here and take it at 38?
I mean, given the holes and the, I guess, like best available in need, I would say they're more likely to take a guy like Kevin Winston at 38 than they are to take a corner. I wouldn't necessarily write off the idea of taking a corner, although I don't know if Amos or Morrison play inside. I know.
No, I think they're both. They're both outside guys. Like I said, I personally think Amos is a stud. Like I think he's a really good player.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if there was a guy in the early part of the second round who had the same, I mean, maybe not talent, but like the same skill set as a guy like Jedi Barron, he's versatile and can play anywhere. Yeah. I think you could see that type of a player at 38 because obviously the Pats don't need an outside corner. I would say it's more likely for them to take a guy like Kevin Winston because they need a true free safety. If Winston's not there, I don't necessarily say that I would write off even trading back from 38. If depending on what the board looks like. But like I know we talked about this last week. I don't know I think we didn't. I don't think we mocked him to the Pats at 38 because we didn't necessarily think he would be.
Based off draft value trots, I know that this is a fair deal. 45 and 117 for you would add a what? 4th round pick, something like that. 117.
going back while you're doing that. Going back to who they would pick and who's like available. I wanted to look it up before I said this, but Siobhan Revel, however you say his name.
Oh, I really like him too.
Yeah, he's
he's a dude who
he's
got
a baller.
hurt, tore his ACL. Is going to go like top 15, top 12. So if he's there, it's certainly a risk given the injury history and him coming off a torn ACL, but he's someone to look at as well. I don't know. He's 6'3", so he might just be an outside guy, but he's certainly someone to keep an eye on.
He's a baller. Like he's a guy that could just play. And Maxwell Hairston, like, and this is what I talked about. I posted it the other day. Like they're gonna if they sit at 38, I think that there's like some really good defenders here, right, that are going to be available. Jack Beck is also a guy I don't think that should go under the radar. He is like. He's just seems like a Patriot type player, right? He's really tough. I do think that like this is pretty accurate. That I don't see him ever being a 1, but I think he's going to be a really solid wide receiver in the NFL. But I don't know if they go that far. I'm thinking here, like I want to slide back. Are you guys in agreement there?
Yeah, I guess unless you're going to go with those 3 guys there, Winston.
So my hesitancy to trade back is I don't expect Vrabel to trade back out of his first 2 picks. Like that doesn't seem likely. Like I don't think Vrabel would. Unless he got blown away with an offer and knows that a guy he would take at 38 will still be there at like 40, 45, like not 40. What was it? All
right. So who do they go?
Based on the board, I think. I would lean. I
think there's a chance this.
Williams could definitely be. We said this last time, but 108 is not where he's going to end up for sure.
Yeah. No. He falls he's going to be a top, I think, 60 pick. Like I really do.
Yeah, his rank is probably more accurate to where he would get drafted. Like that might be his floor. Is that like
obviously, we talk about Trey Harris. I'm a big Trey Harris guy. Ben's a big Trey Harris guy. Zach, I don't know where you stand on him. Do you like him?
I do like him. Yeah, I've seen again similar to Makuba, the safety from Texas. Every draft or mock draft I see you guys posting is with Trey Harris, or at least every other one. So similar to him. Watch a ton of his tape. Like what I've seen, kind of. Bit of that like more physical than what we have now, so certainly would be intrigued by him. And I get I said this last time, but I think there's certainly a need for defense. I just think there's far more of a need for like a wide receiver type than than they would go.
Ben,
give me who are you taking it here at 38, or do you want to move back?
So if he's sitting there, I would take Kevin Winston because he and let's just assume his health is there because he fills that true free safety need. And he's a first round talent that you're getting in there in the early second. If you look at, he was basically an 80 grade safety as a freshman, which is insane. So like he's the guy that would top the draft board. Like if he's not sitting there, then I'm absolutely trading back. But like here, it would be like, and not to jump the gun, but it would be like take a guy like Kevin Winston, and then you're sitting there with the assets that you acquired from Vegas. Like I would be looking to trade up from 68 into like the 50 to 55 range. If a guy like Trey Harris or Kyle Williams is still sitting there, like that's what I would be doing. Where it's like, okay, we traded back, we added pieces, we still got Will Campbell. Now we can get a legit free safety.
Yeah, let's take it. It's like Zach, where are you at?
Yeah, I agree. I think go best available here, highest on your board, and then trade up. I wouldn't be sitting at 68 or whatever you get from Vegas.
All right, let's
want to be trading up.
I like Kevin Winston. I think he's a guy that can, once he's healthy, instantly jump into the free safety role and be that. They've lacked it since DMAC has been off the board.
So pause real quick. So, can you go? What did Seattle do at 18? It wasn't a wide receiver, correct?
It was Josh Simmons.
So if they don't go wide receiver at 18, like I would expect them to be in the wide receiver market at 50. Denver if they don't go wide receiver at 20, they'll absolutely be in the market for a wide receiver at 51. So like I think 49 is a hot spot if you can move up from either like 68 or 69 and add.
That's a far move. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a.
But I think
you can play around with it.
But I think if you're looking for that Trey Harris or Kyle Williams guy, this is a spot where you'd have to consider moving up to, because if you don't, then you run the risk of.
All right. So let's look at the draft value chart. Since he's at a 410, 69 is worth 245, right? So you're looking at a 245, 55, 65 point difference, which is roughly a 115. So in theory, you could offer 68 and 106. Or 69 and 106, and that is a good value for them, which I think is pretty doable if I'm the Patriots, right? In this scenario.
Yeah, I mean it says that it's PFF says it's not going to happen.
Certainly not in a position to not be.
I'm just going off the draft value chart, right? So, they're moving back 20 spots, but they end up getting another.
Are you on Draft
What's
Tech?
that?
You on Draft Tech?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that's
250 and 106 is worth 82. Yeah, so that's not even enough.
Wait,
that's
what?
So pick 49 is worth 410. If you offer 68 and 106, that's worth 330. You're still 80 points short.
69's worth 245.
Well, okay, fine. But you said 68.
I said the difference is
the
difference.
Okay, fine. So 69 and 106
points equals
Matt,
over about 17 points.
49 is worth 410. That's not a 65 point difference between for this pick.
Oh, 410. I was doing 310. That is my bad.
Yeah, that's why 106 doesn't get you there.
That is my bad. So we're looking at 165, which is about 85, like the 85th pick. So you're looking more at 69 and 77, which
that's too much. Like, could you ask for like 119 back?
Yeah. So hold on. So 165, 77. So we're looking at about a 40-point swing. So then Cincy would have to send back roughly pick 132. They own 153.
What about will PFF let you do 119? Like, what happens?
Yeah. All right. So let's go 119, and then they get 171 and we get 193.
That's a lot of pieces.
I mean, 3 and 3. Like it certainly wouldn't be the first time where teams swap like 3 picks each to try to balance it.
No, it's true. I mean, all right, fine. That's fine. Well, whatever. Just do it.
All right, let's run that in. So that jumps us up into the 49 spot. That gives us our opportunity now to get into the wide receiver range, right? We talk about the whole best available player, right? Best available player in my mind is probably Benjamin Morrison. I don't know if that's something that they'd be interested in. I really like his game. I think he's just so fluent. But I just don't really see it as realistic.
No,
I know both of you guys
are going to trade up for an outside wide receiver.
Yeah, I know you guys are in the wide receiver market, so that puts us at 3 guys, right? And we're going off base of talk. And it seems like that is Jalen Noel, Kyle Williams, and Trey Harris. I know both Kyle Williams.
Have they been linked to Trey Harris at all? I know they had Kyle Williams in for a visit.
Yeah, Noel in for a visit as well. They did meet with Trey Harris at the combine.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, we don't ever hear about like virtual visits and stuff like that. So I'm sure they've talked to him more, but I know they did meet with him at the scouting combine in a formal interview. So all right. So if we're looking at wide receiver here, which of the three do you guys lean as the most likely pick?
Jalen Noel to me screams prototypical Patriots wide receiver. I know obviously we just talked about Trey Harris, and Kyle Williams is shooting up draft boards and kind of presents a different wrinkle, different mix. But looking at prototypical wide receivers, Jalen Noel to me has always jumped off the page as someone who like would fit in day one and compete for that, like a starting slot receiver spot. So he's someone that I'm certainly pretty confident is a picker, but Ben open to obviously.
Ben,
yeah,
you?
Just based on the fact that they haven't met with Trey Harris, I feel like he might be on the outside looking in. I would say stylistically, I think Kyle Williams fits the offense better, only because you've got Diggs, and then you figure your top two wide receivers today are Diggs and Pop Douglas. Pop Douglas is a do everything type of slot guy, right? So you're probably not gonna like that. To me, is like Jalen Noel is like too much of a slot guy. I love his game, and he just screams Patriot. I just think in terms of build, I think the Patriots go, okay, do we really want so Diggs is your, like, he's 6'1"-ish. He's in that range. He can play outside. He can play inside. I just wonder if they only want one of those guys. Like, Jalen Noel's not an outside wide receiver. Love his game. I just don't know if they would want two different slot guys when they don't have, and not that Kyle Williams is a true outside guy, but it's 6 foot. He's bigger. He needs to add a little bit to his frame. I mean, if you're going to go strictly body size, I think Trey Harris is a better fit for the team. I just think that because they haven't met with him, he's kind of on the outside looking in. So, I mean, realistically, I think it's Kyle Williams, but I wouldn't like.
You guys are going to make me break the tie. Maybe I'll just go Trey Harris, and we don't even.
Yeah, we like. Well, Matt says Trey Harris, so that means we're going to pick Xavier Restrepo.
No, I think that they really like Noel. I think they probably really like Kyle Williams. Looking at Noel, I think he kind of fits like exactly what the mold was of Josh McDaniels' offenses. But I look at Kyle Williams and says I think he fits Drake May better. And so I think I'm going to lean Kyle Williams here for that fact. I think he leans into being a little bit closer into what fits Drake May the best. And that is a guy that has a little bit more size. I think he is really quick. This is what I've been very, very impressed by watching his tape. Right, he's very fluent around the line of scrimmage. He can get open at all areas of the field. So I'm going to break the tie and let's go.
Before you pick him, I'm just going to bring up. So these were his combine measurables. So he measured in at 5'11", 190, which is basically the same build as Jalen Noel. Ran a 4.4 flat 40, which I don't know how that compares to Jalen Noel, but Trey Harris ran a 4.54, so he's noticeably faster than a guy like Trey Harris. Decent broad jump at almost 10 feet. 36.5-inch vertical, and he's viewed as a second round pick, and his NFL comp at this moment is Marvin Mims Jr.
So Jalen Noel's came in at 5'10", 194. He ran a 4.39, so they're basically the same speed. And his comp is Bruce Ellington, who's obviously an old time player.
So this is the quick overview on Kyle Williams. Says fifth-year senior with alignment versatility and home run potential. He will never be tapped as sure-handed, but can separate deep and create big plays, which could make the catch issues easier to swallow. He eliminates pursuit angles as a catch and run artist and gets respectful cushions, this is why I lean, not to say that Jalen Noel doesn't separate well, but Kyle Williams is pretty good at creating separation, allowing for easier comeback throws, which I think is something that you could really add to Drake May. That says his lack of route running fundamentals limit his tree, but that should be correctable with work. And then the last thing, it says his subpar hands do lower his floor, but teams looking to add a playmaker could have him queued up as a future wide receiver 3. So, there's some concerns with his hands, but there's an upside with he has decent separation ability, and he's a true home run hitter, which is something that this offense doesn't have.
Get him some sticky gloves.
Yeah. What's that? I don't know if you guys are you guys aren't old enough to know. You guys aren't old enough to know Little Giants. But yeah.
Now the odds that they trade up again is very unlikely. So I'm going to run it to 68. So this is the pick that obviously that they got from the Raiders. It allowed them to have the extra ammo in the third to move up. So now we're sitting at the top of the third. Like I said, to review, we got Kyle Williams, Kevin Winston, Will Campbell. At this point, they filled their biggest need at left tackle. They filled wide receiver, which is obviously a need. And free safety, I know to some, and by some, I mean unknowledgeable Patriots fans, no offense, they see the word safety and they say, oh, we don't need another safety. We have Kyle Duggar and Mapu and Peppers. This Kevin Winston is not that. Like, he's not that. He's a guy that can play the deep part of the field. He was outstanding in 2023. Like, this grade is an 89.2, doesn't even do it justice. He was outstanding for Penn State in 2023, and he's a guy that can come in. He's not the one downside of him, I think, is he's not the best tackler, but he's a guy that can play the center field and be that guy that Devin McCourty was in New England.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I wish I could see like his full breakdown from 2023, not 2024. I'd love to know what his coverage and run defense grades were last year, because obviously they're based on 2024. They're not based on 2023.
Yeah. While you find it, so looking at this, like, I'm not going to even consider Mason Taylor. He's going to go in the top 2 rounds. He can even go into the first round. So we'll see on that. Obviously, at this point, like, it's, in my opinion, and this is usually, I think how they should go anyways, it's really kind of just like take the best available. They could use an edge rusher. They could use some D-line depth, but I don't think it's a must here. They could sit there and go, in my opinion, Dylan Sanson's a guy that they met with. Tate Ratledge would be an instant day one starter.
Yeah, he's underrated in my opinion. I don't think his Pro Football Focus grades do it justice. He's a monster for an inside offensive lineman. You don't see many 6'6" guards in the NFL.
320.
And I know he's struggled a little bit against some of the better talent, the more talented teams, but you figure you've got a lot of questions at left guard. You've got, depending on, I know that we look at guys for the right side of the offensive line. Matt, you've been talking about him longer than I have, but I'm right there with you as a guy like Cam Williams being a true developmental right tackle for the future. But like for me at this point, like the guy that I'm looking at is, and I'm going to butcher his name, the edge rusher from UCLA. The Pats had him in on a visit. I think he's a little underrated on Pro Football Focus, but I think he's a guy you could get at 68.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good spot for him. So, like you said, he's. I'll pull him up right here. I couldn't. Olufemi Aladeo. He came in for his visit. He's a pretty well-rounded, kind of like edge off-ball linebacker guy. He can cut, and this is probably he offers position versatility. He's consistent. He's got a pretty good size, 6'3", 250 for himself. That's average overall. The other options for me, I love Wyatt Millum. I love his game. He's a left tackle at West Virginia, but he looks like he's going to be a guard in the NFL. This dude's just a mauler. And I'm not going to the idea of Campbell and Millum at the left tackle and left guard. If offensive line can give you a stiffy, that this would be that.
Yeah, I also like Milam or Milam, however you say his name. So just real quick, because I brought up so quick write up on Oladeo for his NFL draft profile. He did not run at the combine, so he doesn't have a ton of numbers. And when I say run at the combine, he didn't do a 40. He just had a vertical and a broad jump, and benched. But he didn't do a ton of drills. Zierlein didn't actually do a comp on him because I think he did so little at the combine that he just couldn't comp him. So the one thing I like, and I think you brought it up in the versatility component. He is a converted linebacker. He's a linebacker turned edge rusher. It says whose draft profile might have gone from dull to dynamic with a flick of a switch. He's long and aggressive in attacking blockers in front of him. Lack of instincts in the run game and plans as a pass rusher could be temporary bumps in the road that should be smoothed out with coaching, because it seems like he's still in that process of becoming a true edge guy versus a stand-up outside linebacker. It says he greets and discards blockers with powerful, twitchy hands and still plays with the linebacker's range and nose for the football despite the new position. He catches the developmental tag relative to his edge experience, but traits and tape suggest he will make a difference sooner than expected. So it seems like he's more of a high floor developmental guy who's only going to get better with experience and coaching. I'm not necessarily dead set on taking him here, but if you're going to go edge, if you're not going to go offense, I guess you're going to go defense, he would be the guy at the top of my board at this spot.
Zach, where are you at here?
Yeah, I was leaning towards edge as well, just because if once you get out of the third round, it becomes a bit more of like a who's who. But then hearing about Wyatt Millam and getting all excited about that left side of the infield left side of the line as you mentioned, certainly.
Yeah, I don't think you want Wyatt Millam at shortstop.
No, that wouldn't go.
Range factor -100.
Yeah, if we're talking about Christian Campbell being too big, then he's certainly a bit bigger than that. No, but Wyatt Millam getting on that left guard position, obviously pass blocking was a huge concern last year, but run blocking was no better. So you kind of shore that up, and that certainly provides a lot more space for a guy like Ramondre Stevenson. They obviously want to add another running back as well. So I like this pick here. If they go Millam or if they go someone like him, especially if he's a plus run blocker, like it says.
Screw Ben. I'm gonna break the tiebreaker here, and I'm gonna go with my boy. I'm going with Wyatt Millam here.
Or real quick, so if we're gonna go offensive line, because I don't have a problem with that. Is there a reason why we don't go with somebody like Ozzie Trapillo, who the I almost said the Red Sox? You're talking about the left side of the infield. Throw me off there, Zach. But talk about right side of the talk about shoring up your offensive line. I mean, he's skinny, but you don't see many 6'8" offensive linemen. He comes from a football family. How do we feel about him as your developmental right tackle of the future?
I like him. I do. I just think he's a little bit, like you just said, he's more of a developmental guy.
Okay.
I think he needs a little bit more work. So when I look at this scenario and I say, okay, long term, you could bet on Ozzie and say if he develops right, he could be more valuable at even left tackle or right tackle. Because I think developmental wise, if he's not going to start the first year, he can kind of work at both. He could be more valuable than a guard, which is certainly true. But I look at him, and I'll say this: we obviously have Doug Malone. I'm saying the name right? Why does that sound wrong? But
Doug Marone.
Marone. Yeah, there you go. I knew it sounded wrong. Came from BC. So
shout out Doug Malone if you're listening.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he's going to know Ozzie very well. So he certainly could be a big pick here. He's going to have more knowledge than any other team. The Patriots going to have more knowledge of any other team in the NFL on Ozzie Trapillo, Drew Kendall, who's the center from BC. They'll have even more info really on than like the first round edge guy. I don't know how to say his name. From BC.
Donovan Azaraku.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
We both butchered his last name. But the one thing I will say about Millam that I really, really like, I mean, it's really hard, to pass up on a guy who, as a borderline undersized left tackle, the guy had a run block grade of 89 and a pass block grade of 92.5. Now, granted, I understand he played. I think West Virginia plays in the Big 12. But so it's like he's not necessarily playing against like top-notch competition. His lowest graded game was against Penn State, which means he probably got absolutely dominated by Abdul Carter. But
even a 62 isn't great, but it's not.
No, it's league average.
Embarrassing. Yeah, I looked at him, and so coming in, he was my favorite offensive lineman. The dude is a mauler.
Yeah, he was one of my top offensive line prospects.
And so he came in and his arms are give it like 32 and a half. So that really kind of cuts the line of more into the guard spot. And so I look at this and I say, they could put here and they draft Will Millam here. You are looking at, and if let's say Will Campbell pans out at left tackle and he is a good to at least solid left tackle, you have your left side of the line set for the next 5 years or, 4+, ideally the next 10 years.
Real quick, Matt, what were the pro day measurements on arm length? They were like a half an inch longer.
Yeah. So they ended up being, it seems like on pro days, the average arm length was around like 4. I could pull it up right here.
I'm only curious. So Wyatt's arms at the combine were 32 and an eighth. So he's
they came in at 32 and 5/8 at his showcase, which
is a half an inch
according
longer.
to this was at Senior Bowl, I think. Yeah, at the Senior Bowl he got measured and it came in at 32 and 5/8. So I would say max 32 and a half you're looking at for him, which is just kind of more of a guard. Like I said, I'm leaning him here because is it the sexiest pick? No. But we talk about the need to protect Drake May. And you will instantly, you draft Will Campbell, which, I don't need to get into, but you put Campbell and Millam and if they both hit, we're talking about instantly, the left half of the line is set. You got Onwenu at right guard, you got Moses at right tackle, and you got whoever the best available at center. This offensive line can day one be a significantly better offensive line. So
you'd be going in there with minimal question marks at the offensive line position.
Yeah, the only, in my opinion, the only question mark really would be who's playing center. That's kind of there
is no question mark on who's playing center.
It's probably Bradbury. Yeah, it's more than likely Bradbury.
I don't think they signed him to be maybe the center. I think unless he rolls out of bed and forgets how to play football or gets hurt, he's the center.
I don't know. I think if they draft a guy like Millam, I think Cole Strange is going to get an opportunity there. I wouldn't rule out him.
The Cole Strange.
I wouldn't rule him out as an option in terms of beating out Bradbury.
But
either way,
I would say the likelihood of a guy like Strange, who's never played center, beating out a guy who is a center is not very high.
Yeah, well, Cole Strange played at the end of last year, so he's got a little bit of experience there. But, regardless, if center is your biggest need, first of all, that's usually a pretty good thing because it's kind of the easiest place to cover up. So let's go Millam him. I really like that deal. So now we're looking here. We're jumping into this range. I'm going to just pause for a second. We got 4 players, right? So when we talk about realistic of how many they're going to draft, the Patriots have what? We have 6 more picks. So that's kind of the max of why I want to stay at.
Yeah.
We have the conversations of we haven't actually conversations. Do you guys want to try to maybe send out a guy like Kayshon Boutte here in a deal where we heard the report today that if the Patriots add a wide receiver, then he could be a guy that gets moved. We obviously added Kyle Williams. We don't have to do it here exactly at 106 or anything like that, but is he someone you think that they do end up moving if they draft a wide receiver?
Yes, but I don't think they're doing it during the course of the NFL draft and adding 2025 draft picks. Like, I think that they would go into camp and figure out, okay, who's on the outside looking in. I would say I wouldn't necessarily say that Booty becomes that player, although he's easier to trade than Jalen Polk. I think that they're willing to give Polk some time.
Okay.
I mean, to be fair, they gave N'Keal Harry 3 years.
But he was a first-round pick.
I mean, not much difference between 32 and 37, but yes. I mean...
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, they're going to give Polk, I think, at least this year in the new offense.
Yeah. But what I was saying is, like, I get that N'Keal Harry was a first-round pick, but he was terrible. So I think that, if you look at, like, where they're at, like, I wouldn't necessarily rule out, like, them moving up from 106. But I would say, especially because they haven't really done much to help the defensive side of the ball. In the draft.
At here, just to kind of give a quick rundown. Ashton Gillette, guy I really, really, really like. The dude, he's just going to last in the NFL. He's hard-nosed. He plays tough. He's strong. Like, the dude could just play. I really like his game. He's a guy he's just going to last. I don't know if he'll ever be a full-time elite starter, but like he's going to last in the NFL. I know we liked Harold Fannin last time. Jacob Parrish is a guy that I think fits what the Patriots are looking for. The guy can kind of play a little bit of everywhere. I know he played primarily outside, but I know he can play inside as well.
Yeah, he screams like your traditional inside / nickel corner in the NFL.
Yeah, 5'10", like that's not, and so we look at a reliable tackler, has the potential to be a strong nickel, and right there. So like that works. I know this is a guy that came in for a visit, Byron Sorrell. He made the visit to New England. It fits what the Patriots need. So 6'4", 260. He's got pretty solid size overall. He's pretty versatile, like it says here. He can kind of move around the defense. Like I said, he visited. So I think it was Mike Reese that connected him again as a potential option. So at least in my opinion, I think the most likely draft picks would be Parrish, a guy like Sorrell, or if you want to come down into this range, I think that they could jump at like a running back, I think it's Jarquez Hunter that they visited, Jaden Blue visited. I haven't heard have you guys heard anything if they're connected to Brashad Smith?
I haven't, no.
I have
other than him like fitting the mold, I haven't heard them much of connection, or obviously Trevor Etienne.
I think if I've heard anything from Brashad Smith, it would have been people connecting him because it was after McDaniel said they want to add a pass catching back, and he obviously played receiver, but outside of that, I haven't heard much.
Yeah, we can obviously kind of speed this up as we get into these later rounds, but how do you guys feel here in terms of most likely pick? I'm going to just for the sake of it, don't consider Ashton Gillette as an option.
Why?
Don't consider him as an option?
Because I think I just really struggle to see him being available here at 102. His market, from what I read, is kind of really going up. I expect him to be more in like this range.
So if we're taking him off the
70s, 80s, maybe 90s.
Yeah. If we're taking him off the board, given what we've already picked this far, it's been offense heavy, and obviously we're still going, best available. But there still is a need at edge rusher. There's still a need at running back. I think you can probably get it if you go into the 119 round for the running back. So I'm going to hold off there.
Okay.
So I'm with you between Parrish and Sorrell. I think corner is probably a spot that they look at. Right, there's been a lot of talk about Marcus Jones being on the fringe
Yeah,
of making
Andrew
the team or
Callahan,
not. So
when we had him on, made that comment. Yep.
yeah, so if they get rid of him, especially now they're obviously down one more, so he could be someone that I think they look at as a replacement or just
not even necessarily. I
competition
think to get rid of Marcus Jones, just to maybe upgrade for Marcus Jones.
Yeah, like a little competition
and
to bring him in.
I made the comment on social media that, like, what if there's a scenario where, you know, they upgrade at corner, and this was more if they went corner in like round 2, that, you know, Marcus Jones gets pushed down the board. Like, what if that opens him up to being more of an asset offensively? Like, is that the worst thing possible?
Yeah, true.
So I'm a fan of Parrish.
I was gonna say I struggle to see Marcus Jones really having a role on this team. Given, like, if you're drafting a corner, you're pushing him out. You're gonna need to draft a wide receiver. Like, he's not jumping high enough. Like he would need to be he basically becomes a guy that doesn't have a role on the team, and you could, like, maybe you have, you know, a couple of plays mixed in. Like
that's what I mean. I don't think he's going to be a full-time offensive guy. I'm not saying that. A guy that you, like, put out there for 5 to 7 snaps a game. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe you got a couple plays lined up each game. All right, so Zach seems kind of. I'll let you break this tie break between a Baron Sorrell and a Jacob Parrish.
So, just for the sake of moving things along, I disagree with the idea that there's almost no chance of Aston Gillette being there in the early 4th, because he's pegged as a 3rd or 4th round player. So while he could very well go in the 3rd, I don't think it's wildly unrealistic that he's still sitting there at 106. But I mean, if we're going to write him off altogether, then I'm leaning Jacob Parrish. He fits a need defensively. I think he's versatile. He's very talented. Like, I love him as a 4th round pick for the Pats.
Let's run with it.
I just don't think that and if Gillette's not sitting there in the early 4th, I think a guy like Oladeo is.
All right, so we're sitting here at 119 now, right? So let's just a quick recap as we'll speed up here because we're getting towards the second half of the draft. You know, they got their tackle, they got their left guard. The O-line is for the most part set offensively, starting wise. They added a wide receiver. Then, you know, maybe they take a flyer at the later rounds, but you know, shout out, I think it might have been Dan Kelly on X. And he made the comment about, like, people talking about flyers and the 6th or 7th round wide receiver. It's like, yes, you could take flyers in this spot, but, like, do you want to take guys that have no path to a roster spot, right? So when we look at this and we get into the later round, do we want to take a flyer at wide receiver? Well, where is he going to fit? We have a shit ton of guys already. So I don't think if they take, I think one wide receiver is the most likely scenario here. So I don't think they'll go with that again the rest of the draft.
No, this is where I would look running back here, knowing that they've.
Yeah, so I agree.
Yeah, so they got, you know, so they, again, at this point, I'm really all about, you know, let's go best available. And not that at this point in the draft am I like some pro on every guy available, but looking at the names that sit here, Noah Williams is a guy I absolutely love. Obviously, they just went at corner. I think he's rising up boards. I think he could end up being a 3rd round guy. Tyler Betty is a guy that fits. Like, he's pretty versatile.
Good size.
You know, he's a pretty good, a very good size. And so he could fit. Like, we haven't taken an edge rusher, obviously. Billy Bowman's a guy I also like, but again, they're not going to go safety again. Tyler Robinson, we talked about last week. Obviously, then now we start getting into this. Looks like Cameron Jackson they brought in, Jazzquez Hunter they brought in, Jaden Blue they brought in. Where are you guys leaning here? Trevor Etienne, Mike Reese specifically brought him up. So for him to specifically bring up Etienne tells me that he probably heard something that they like him enough where, like, he's on their radar. I know you both said running back, but where are you feeling here?
I mean, Blue's rating is higher than, or his ADP is higher than his rank. So I think, like, this is more accurate of a spot where Jaden Blue probably goes. I haven't heard anything about them being linked to Jaden Blue like they have with Trevor Etienne. I mean, I don't want to say that like we could sit on Etienne and wait for him at 144. I think that if he's that high in your draft board and he's been linked to the team, I think you could realistically see him in this position. But given that they specifically have been linked to running backs, I mean, if you want to go off of the rank, like this would be a reach for ETN, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if they went with ETN. Like if they ended up in this spot, I wouldn't be shocked if they ended up with him here. Jaden Blue is the higher ranked running back prospect, but if they've been linked closer to ETN, like that wouldn't really shock me. Like Blue is just like your quintessential like receiving back. He's got some decent size. Like he could be a guy that you could, maybe he could mix in with Stevenson. But he doesn't have the weight to be your quintessential like between the tackles, 2 down back kind of guy. He's definitely more of a receiving threat.
Okay.
Yeah, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's certainly where there's smoke, there's fire. Especially when a guy like Reese talks about ETN. But I agree. Looking at his, and again, this is PFF. It isn't like real life, but looking at his rank and seeing that we have 144 coming up, it certainly would be a reach. Just based on this again, but I think
I will say the point though, like, at this point where like anybody could go anywhere. You know what I mean? Like we see guys in the 6th go in the 5th, and like I wouldn't put too much into PFF's grades and all that.
No, that's I guess what I'm getting at is like, the rank says 144, and so based on that, it would be a reach. However, they're looking at running backs. It certainly is a need that they have in terms of what he brings to the table. Has been linked to him, so I would go him here, and then look at edge at 140.
Yeah, so now at this point, we're talking about edge rusher like we didn't really fill, right? Yeah. So that is, and don't get me wrong, they could fill it. They filled it a little bit. They added Harold Landry, they added Chase on. They obviously could add more. They could add another veteran to help fill that in the short term. But at the same time, like I look at this edge, and I'm not sure that there's someone that necessarily jumps out to me. And by necessarily someone, I don't see a single edge rusher.
And there was one.
I saw two. There was a Ty Robinson kid before, and there was also.
Well, he's more interior.
There's a guy in like the one. I think there's a guy in like the 150s or 60s that came up as an edge. There it is.
So
I don't know who that is.
Dawkins. I don't really see it. I don't think they brought him in. I haven't heard any connection over them. This is like he's a good size, but he doesn't really move very well. He's strong in that, like that's the kind of where you put it here. He's strong, but he just doesn't. I don't.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like hindsight is 20/20. I think that if the Pats are sitting there like realistically at 106, and you've got somebody like an Aston Gillette or an Oladeu like sitting there in the like late 90s, like I would, even though I know we mocked a trade up for a wide receiver, because to move up from like 106 to 100, you could just throw it. I think San Francisco has the 100th pick, which is a comp. I think you could easily be like, you could toss them a 7th to move up 6 spots at that spot, and you could legitimately fill your edge spot. Who did we take at 106? Yeah. Can you remind me?
Parrish.
Yeah, so we could have, a couple of different things we could have done differently, but like realistically, that's kind of, if they're sitting there at 106 and like Oladeo is getting close, I could see Vrabel pulling the trigger to move up, 6 or 10 spots and be like, So.
But Emory Jones is a guy I think is going to go much higher because I think they see him as a guard, and I think he has the ability to be a good guard in this league. So I think he's going to go earlier. Tay Felton, guy I absolutely love at this point, but I talked about the concept of not going wide receiver.
Yeah.
Logan Brown we took last week. Excuse me. I look at a guy like this, Cameron Jackson. He came in on a visit, and this is probably the best way to put him.
He's a big dude that fills the middle.
Yeah, he fills up the middle. They brought in Williams, who was a pass rushing interior defensive lineman. They brought in Barmore, or they have Barmore, who is for the most part a similar role. Is a pass rushing interior defensive lineman. I forget his name. They brought him in from Arizona. He is a more depth guy that is a run defensive guy. I look at a guy like Cameron Jackson here that fits a depth position that they need. It would solidify the interior defensive line. He's a run stuffer. You guys can obviously welcome and veto it. Is there anybody else that like jumps off as likely here?
No, I mean, especially where we've already addressed the left side of the offensive line. Like if we didn't go with Milam in this spot, like a guy that I kind of like as a 5th round is I forget his first name, Frazier, the guard from LSU, would be like a decent like later round guard. Same thing with Chase Lunt. You could turn him into something. I mean, at this point, like we've already Cameron Jackson would top my list. I mean, Ty Robinson hasn't been linked to the Patriots, but like
I think he's going to go a little earlier too.
Yeah, he's probably like a mid to late 4.
I mean, Cam Jackson's fits the mold and certainly helps the run defense that was just awful last year too. So
and again, there's a connection there.
Yeah.
All right, let's go run with Cameron Jackson. Like I said, he came in for a visit. He fits the need. He's a run stuffing. Again, we don't go edge here, but we do go defensive line. He fits that need. So we're jumping up here into the 190. The next pick's in the 193. We could, in theory, jump up, right? So we have 7 guys already. We could go and get a guy that we necessarily like. I'll stop it here at the top of right here. This is I guess a little bit more towards Ben. Ben, is there anybody like that you're thinking about here in this range that you think that they could go and get?
In like the 180 range? I mean, that's kind of I'm just gonna bring it up on my PFF.
Not having the names in front of you is annoying as hell.
I mean, guys in like the 170 to 180 range, based on their rank. You've got Malachi Moore, who I like. I mean, it's tricky. Like, there's really, like, you could really just go like best available at that point. Let's see. I'm assuming K'Mon Rucker is gone. Edge rusher from North Carolina.
He went. I think he's
ranked in the 140s, but I don't know if he actually got drafted.
I think he goes earlier. Yeah,
there he is. 107.
So Jake Majors is the guy that he's the center that did come. He does have a connection. Keandre Lambert-Smith, wide receiver from Auburn, he has the connection. Is there anyone that I know that has had a specific connection here? Drew Kendall is going to be available. I don't know if he's going to be available here. Maybe here in the early 6th, but is a little bit more unlikely. Is there anyone else? We already went running back. Efton Chisholm is an option. Cam Horsley is a defensive lineman in Boston College, which we talked about Doug Marrone. Like, he went up against him in practice every day, so he's got a pretty good idea of what this guy is. Simon Barrow Jr., defensive lineman from Miami. What's his name? The front office guy. I'm having a mind blank of what his name is. that they brought in. Highsmith, there you go. He's a Miami guy, so he just came over last year, so he obviously fits a little bit. Anybody else specifically that you guys would want to move up for, other than just waiting our pick and making a selection? I think we'll probably just wait here, right, and see what comes up. Tonka Hemingway is a guy that I've had some interesting in. So, all right, so we're sitting here at 193. I mean, he's not going to be available. Tyler Show, not even a chance. Ty Roberts is also not going to be available. Excuse me. Is there anyone in this range that you guys necessarily like over someone else specifically?
Not particularly. I mean, I've always kind of had my eye on Malachi Moore because he's a versatile, last line of defense kind of guy.
Ben, remember when we talked about this guy?
Yeah, I specifically don't want to touch him just because some guy mocked the Patriots. They mocked the Patriots trading back to 10 and then taking that guy at 41.
Jesus.
And then Matt and I were like, wait, who is this guy? And then we looked up and I was like, Matt, this guy doesn't even exist in Pro Football Focus's database. Why?
Yeah, they added him. They added. It was so weird. I think so weird. I looked into him
because of that mock draft. They saw.
Yeah, I looked into him. He's got some upside. I think he's gonna get drafted. But I doubt by the Patriots here.
Yeah, I like how a guy who might get drafted is a guy that gets mocked to the Pats in the high second round.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
It'd be a very Bill Belichick move.
Yeah.
Signs
of Razai Dowling and Cyrus Jones and Juwan. Oh my God.
Tavon Wilson and Jordan Richards and we just listed off a handful without even blinking.
Who's the kid from Vandy they drafted the second round?
Juwan Williams.
Williams.
Colin Oliver is a guy that I like a bit. He's small. That's the best. Yeah, I mean, he's small, but he's got some really nice pass rushing moves. I like the way he plays. He did not play at all. Well, not at all. He played 2 games last year. But I like his upside. So he's a guy that I kind of like here. They obviously need an edge rusher. We haven't filled it yet. So, you guys got any objection here on Colin Oliver or someone else?
That works for me.
Yeah, file me.
All right, let's go Colin Oliver here. So now we got 2 more picks left. We obviously could go kicker. That is an option. We could go. Oh boy, we could go Malachi Moore, but we obviously took Winston. I think at this point is a good spot for a kicker.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was looking at the prospects. So Ryan.
I'm overriding you both. No. Do you want to go Fitzgerald or Miami?
I was looking at statistics. NCAA kicker stats. I brought this up on ESPN. Let's see. Kicking. So 2024 kickers that are eligible, right? So most field goals attempted in 2024. Oh no, oh God, this gave me team stats. Oh, damn it.
All right, we don't get time for this, Benjamin.
Yeah, it's fine. So I like the kid from Miami because he had more. He doesn't quite have the leg as Fitzgerald, but he's way more accurate. Fitzgerald, oddly enough,
and I know
he had a poor success rate from 40 to 49 yards, which is kind of an odd thing to I don't like that in a kicker.
All right, let's finish this up here.
Who's the? I know Matt. You and I have done this a handful of times. Who's the linebacker from Georgia? It's like
it was the guy.
Mondin.
Yeah,
Mondin. Yeah, he's all there. He is.
Yeah, we could take him. He's a flyer.
We picked him last time. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
I was gonna say I could see them taking like a Brosmer, or I don't know if he'll be there. Who's the kid from Indiana? Rourke. Like I could see them taking
the guy from the kid from Florida. I like the 7th round flyer at QB. Stuff like that. Maybe he ends up a backup. But all right, so this is what we're looking at, and we'll finish it up here. Obviously, I will save this image. Rtb Mock
Final
2.0. Oh,
slash.
I guess it is final. Yeah.
Slash final. I like how.
So all right, yeah. So that will finish us up here. Obviously, with the draft Thursday, we talked about this. It's going to be I think it's going to be a chaotic first round. So, any final thoughts on the draft as a whole? We won't be back until after the draft. Post thoughts. And I think we got a guest or two lined up for that.
Yeah, maybe
final thoughts there.
Maybe if the listeners are lucky, we'll go live from Casa Couture Thursday. We'll just do Facebook Live just for reactions. I mean,
maybe I'll go live on X.
Yeah. So I would say, like Matt, you hit the nail on the head. Chaotic. I think expect the unexpected. After the top 3, I think expect the unexpected. You could get something weird at 3. I just don't see it. But I think we only have the first round on Thursday, so it's kind of like we might have a little bit of glass half full, glass half empty syndrome, because if they don't take, say they trade back and they get, they're only going to get one guy Thursday night, right? Like say they trade back and they don't get like Walker or Campbell or Warren, I think we're going to be sitting there twiddling our thumbs being like, okay, well, what are they going to do in the second and third round to make us feel good about what they just did in the first? But yeah, I mean,
you there?
He muted himself.
All right.
I don't know what happened. Weird technology. I would say, should be fun. I would say if we come out of the draft with Campbell, Ty Warren, one of those two guys, I think you've got to be over the moon excited. Just because I don't think it feels.
Long story short, they're gonna add a significant piece, which is
rap sheet about an hour ago tweeted out, even if Carter's there at 4, he still expects Pats to take Will Campbell. And in the same breath,
throw up.
I saw another tweet that said kind of to what I was saying, that the Giants ownership and like higher front office execs are still wondering if they should take Shedeur at 3, even though a lot of the coaching staff is like, hell no, I'm not taking him at 3.
I said it early today,
but
I think it's Dable wants Dart and Schoen wants Sanders. I think that's what it is, and I think it's going to be a battle, and maybe ownership has to step in. But all right, let's wrap this up for this week. Go Pats! Like I said, they'll add a significant move no matter what, but we'll be back next week and we'll have a full draft recap. Let's hope they trade back. Yeah.
Quick state your take. I think the Browns, because they haven't figured out who they're going to draft yet, are going to miss their opportunity, and the clock's going to run out on them because they're going to be fighting over whether they should take Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. And they're going to.
I called them morons last week, and you were like, "They're not morons for no, they're morons." The Browns deserve, after this Deshaun Watson mess, the Browns deserve all the misery that's coming to them. So, Kevin Stefanski, I like you. You're a good coach. You should have forced your way out of Cleveland a while ago. Now you're just stuck there, and the Browns are going to be stuck in misery for the next decade, like they have the previous decade. So, screw you all. Goodbye. Raise the banner.
Good night.